Hello, my name is Dr. Dicken.bettinger. So what are the three principles? The three principles are thought, consciousness, and mind. And they were first talked about as the three principles by a man named Sydney Banks, who had an enlightenment experience. And in this experience, he described it as entering this field of buzzing white light, and all sense of himself disappeared. Self as a body, as a separate being. And he entered into this field of energy, pure energy, buzzing light energy. And we would ask Sid, it sounds like you had a near-death experience. And he said, no, I went into this light. I experienced an immensity. I experienced a feeling of the most incredible feeling I have ever experienced. And I went all the way through that to the other side, to the very source of life. And there was no sense of individual self. It was just an experience and simultaneously a realization. And when he came back after, he said it only took about 4 seconds, and he came back from this experience and he said to his wife, I've come home. I've transcended the boundaries of time, space, and matter. What I have just discovered, I will travel the world and share this understanding, and it will change the nature of psychology and psychiatry. And then upon reflection, he realized that this infinite field of formless energy that he entered into was what we're all intimately a part of and connected to. We're made of that same energy. And one principle, the principle of mind, says that this field of energy is filled with intelligence. It's the intelligence that knows how to create life, everything, every single thing in the universe that has form. It knows how to create life, and it knows how to operate what's created. That's the principle of mind, the intelligence behind all of life. He says another fundamental universal principle is the principle of consciousness, that this field of infinite energy, formless energy, is what allows anything that's created in life to be aware. We call that the principle of consciousness. And the third principle, he says, this whole infinite field of creative energy is what creates the specific forms in life and knows how to create those. So he called that the principle of thought. So in human beings, this source intelligence generates every single aspect of our human experience. Thought brings that energy into form as thought created experience. So everything that we're experiencing is created from the principle of thought, empowered by mind, and consciousness is what allows us to be aware of what is created. And it also allows us to be aware that there's a source of creation. So let me say this another way. I can go anywhere in the world, and I've traveled around the world and shared these principles with people in all ages, all cultures, all backgrounds, and say to people, you have a mind. I have no argument. No one argues. And I say, well, your mind is capable of far greater things than you have ever imagined. And people are certainly open to that possibility, right? You think, and you can be aware of the fact that you think. You can be aware of the fact that you have a mind. No one argues. So the three principles, mind, consciousness, and thought, are the creative, formless energy in life that generates every single moment of our experience here on Earth for every human being. So they're universal principles. If you took away any one of those, you would not have a human being. If there was no source generating your experience, you wouldn't be alive. If there was no principle of thought, you wouldn't have any mental activity that would allow you to have feelings and experience. And if there was no awareness, you couldn't be aware of anything that was in your experience or in life. These are three fundamental and necessary and essential principles or foundational forces behind what it means to be a human being. So I can say you think, you're aware, and you have a mind. I can say whatever a human being thinks, this power will turn that thought into a feeling experience. So if at any moment, if a sad thought is generated, you'll feel sad. You'll look out at the world through that lens. If an angry thought is generated, you'll feel angry. If a happy thought is created, you'll feel happy. So there are no exceptions to how this works. There are no exceptions to how this works. Every single human being is living from this formless creative energy into the experience they're walking around in. Now, Sid Banks called that formless, infinite formless field of energy that we're connected to. He called that the inside because it's invisible. It's formless. Sometimes he'd say it's spiritual, but by spiritual, he didn't mean experiences. He meant the formless, creative, aware power of creation. So I call that the inside. And then whatever was created in our experience is the outside. So the outside world is the world of form. Right? It includes us psychologically as what we think, the content of our thinking, the content of our awareness, the content of our what the objects in the world that we perceive, the nature, that's all created by these universal life-creating principles. They're the foundation of all life. Sid would say, there's nothing beyond the principles. They're infinite. How could there be anything beyond them? A recent research study by the scientists at NASA, some of the top scientists in the world who have been studying the energy of our universe, not all the universe, but our universe. And they say if you take everything that can be seen with instrumentation, with the largest telescopes, so the largest suns and stars and planets and asteroids and everything in the physical world that can be seen with telescopes. And then everything that can be seen with instrumentation like subatomic microscopes, who can sense and measure the smallest created particles, neutrinos, protrinos. And they said, if you take the energy of everything that has form in our universe, it only accounts for 4% of our universe. And 96% of it is dark energy. Or sometimes they talk about an aspect of it as dark matter, but it's invisible. It can't be seen. It can't be measured. It's formless. And that's what Sid talked about as the formless dimension of life. So when he had his enlightenment experience, he said it seemed very ordinary. He just went beyond the influence of his conceptual mind into this vast, vast quiet space within and experienced the most beautiful feeling, the purest of pure love, because it was total, experiencing the connection with everything. That it was alive with a knowing, right? Which in human beings sometimes we call wisdom, a formless intelligence before the creation of the intellect, before the operation of the intellect, an intelligence beyond what can be measured with IQ, the intelligence of life itself, the source intelligence, wisdom. So Sid would talk about these principles as if you want to get a sense of your connection to this dimension of life that's non-physical, that's spiritual, that's formless, that's inside. He said there's only one way. You must go beyond the content of your own ideas and concepts and beliefs. That's what happened in his enlightenment experience. He went beyond the influence of all concepts of who I am, what life is, what I'm doing, what's happening, what this means, all the judgments, all the shoulds, all the, beyond the intellect. If you use the metaphors, the intellect is like a beautiful computer. That's one aspect of the principle of thought. The computer can't know what lies beyond itself, can only know what's stored within its memory or its capacity to retrieve. It's information-based. So the intellect can never know the principles. So Sid would see us trying to figure it out and analyze these principles. He'd say, don't even bother because it's impossible. He says, if you want to know these principles, just listen. Let go of everything you're thinking. Go beyond your intellect. Go beyond your ideas. Just rest deeply in what's always here. When you're not holding a single thought in mind, you don't disappear. You don't become dumb. You become fully, deeply present. He talked about stepping into a space where there's no thought and it's pure because it's not filtered through concepts. Pure, it's not contaminated by ideas or beliefs. Pure consciousness, awareness, free of the contamination of the personal mind, the conceptual mind. Where you go from the physical to the spiritual, from the known to the unknown, from the outside to the inside, to being in this field of aware presence. He thought any human being could touch that space within. And that when we touch pure consciousness, this deeper intelligence will reveal more and more of its secrets to us, and it will bring us feelings of well-being. So when people quiet down and their heads clear, they start to feel better. You start to feel more connected. When I go for a walk in the woods, when my head quiets down, I feel more intimately connected to nature, to trees, to the flowers. When I'm with people, when I'm with my wife, when my head quiets down, it clears of all my ideas and thoughts and beliefs and judgments and shoulds, and there's just this warm presence. Pure mind is the experience of the connectedness of life. That we are always connected to this field of energy, the way a wave is intimately connected to the ocean. It's not separate. And so the experience of this connection in its purest form is, Sid would say, it's pure love. So he'd say, if you go beyond your conceptual mind, there's pure thought, there's pure consciousness, there's pure mind. And he said, pure thought is love, pure consciousness is love, pure mind is love. And as a psychologist who's worked with people for over 40 years, seeing how when people get caught up in their thinking, and especially if that thinking creates tension, stress, or upset, and we identify with that 4% of who we are, that's what Sid called ego. And that's what psychological suffering is. We identify with the thinking as being true. We believe it to be true. So you have a thought, I'm stupid. You'll think it's true rather than realize, oh, that's just a thought. You let it go, it doesn't even exist. You drop into a space where that thought dissolves. What remains? Aware presence, pure consciousness. Or it becomes pure as we go deeper. A sense of connection to life, a closeness. We feel closer to people. It's built into us. Sid would say that's our nature. Our true self is not just the 96%, it's the 100%. Ego is thinking who we are is just this little 4% of form that I'm holding on to and thinking is true. And it's an illusion. It's just thought. So that when we realize, oh my gosh, I'm really upset, but it's just thought I'm holding on to, when we, as Sid would say, you go beyond all thought, content, you step within, you come to this formless dimension of pure thought, pure consciousness, pure mind. And it brings to life our experience in a loving, connected way. So Sid would sometimes simplify the principles and say, it's all thought. We live in the world of a thought-created experience our whole life. The world doesn't make us feel what we feel. We're experiencing our thinking moment to moment. Every one of us, from the cradle to the grave, Sid would say. It's all thought. And listen, because you can't think and listen at the same time. Or if you really see that you're caught in thought, he'd say it'll bring you back to the now, which is another word for this space of presence. Listen for a feeling, he would say. There's always a feeling of connection, of well-being, of closeness, a warmth, a kindness, a caring that's innate to us. So the more we understand how these principles work in their nature, the more we know when we're using our intellect wisely and when we're using it in a way that's generating tension, stress, or upset. And then, thank God, tension, stress, and upset become our friends. They remind us that we're holding or caught up in thought that's limited, that's judgmental, that's not who we are, that's not truth. And as we release our hold on, through understanding, through insight, we release our hold on thought. More and more, we begin to rest in this space of aware presence, and this deeper wisdom brings us feelings that uplift and new and fresh thinking. That's where our new and fresh thinking, our creativity comes from. And it's built into everybody, no exception, because we're all part of this same ocean of life energy. So I thought I would just give a little introduction to these principles, and I sure hope this was helpful to you. Thank you for listening.